Welcome to the Leadership Secrets Podcast, where we bring you no BS, practical advice from the experts that are doing it. Now, here's your host, Lee Lisenby.
All right. Hello, fellow Leadership Secret viewers or listeners. This is Lee Lisenby. I have a special guest today, Kellen Ketchersid. He is a former employee of mine. We worked at a former company together, and I've kind of followed his career throughout his journey. He's currently at a really cool company called Nemolife. He's doing great things there. He has some really great leadership skills that I wanted to bring to this podcast, is because we talk a lot about leadership secrets, and I don't know if he has a secret, but he has a way about him that I think you'll see as we get into the interview. He always had this kind of it factor when it came to leadership, and I'm hoping we can share that and kind of bring that out of him on this podcast. Kellen, how's it going, man?
Oh, good. Thanks for the introduction. I hope I can live up to it.
Yeah, I'm sure you will. And if you don't mind, just kind of give them the highlights of what's going on with you, maybe a little bit about your journey to where you're at, and let them know who Kellen Ketchersid is.
All right. Well, yeah, thanks. So right now I'm serving as the Director of Operations at Nemolife. We're a clinical research organization. So what we specialize in is some basic research for companies in the pharmaceutical, supplement, food industries, among others, where we basically do compound screens. So what does that mean? It means if I'm a pharmaceutical or a supplement company and I've got 100 different drugs or supplement candidates and I want to see the effects of them, our company will screen those through our lab, and we'll be able to look at the data and tell our clients, these are your top 5, and then they can take them on to other things. So I get to oversee our screening lab. We have a manufacturing area where we make microfluidic chips that go through our lab. So it feeds into that pipeline. We also sell those to customers, and then we have a data analysis team. So I get to play in a lot of different areas of the company and talk to, lead different people with different skill sets. So that's a lot of fun. It's challenging and stretches me out a lot. So I was glad I had the experience before at Osteogenics. So that's where we work together, and just for your listeners. And so that was a medical device manufacturer. And so I got to learn under my director of operations there. So that was you. But before that, I was at Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota, in the molecular genetics lab. So we did, it's the largest genetics lab in the country, at least at that time. So at the Mayo Clinic, and really got a great experience there and got to learn from good leaders there. So yeah, I guess I kind of went backwards, but that's sort of the summary of my journey.
Yeah, the Mayo Clinic thing was always fascinating to me. You've done a lot of really cool things. You grew up here in the same town we're in today, and then you went off to Minnesota, I guess, to work the Mayo Clinic. Then you kind of have a science background. Then you did a lot of things at Osteogenics when we worked together. You went from kind of a science background to more of a regulatory background. You took that over and ran with it. Then you were the production manager, which that's kind of where I really first discovered you. I mean, we always knew each other as somewhat of a small company, but you came in my operation group, and it was a breath of fresh air seeing you there. I feel like to me, outside looking in, I saw a lot of traits, and I don't necessarily think that leaders are born, but there's some inherent traits, and the really good leaders, maybe most of them are all students of leadership, and I think that's important, is that you study it. And you and I would talk about some of those things that we were reading, or we went to conferences together when we were there. We learned. We're always constantly learning, and I always think that kind of separates leaders. What's your thoughts on that continuous improvement or education when it comes to leadership? Is that something you find important?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think if you're not growing, then it's hard to stay an effective leader, you know. And that was something that I enjoyed when we worked together. Was I mean, like you said, you were the one that noticed that I was working alone, and I was willing and excited about having an opportunity to lead people, and you know getting to know your people on a real level. You set the example of not just talking on a business level all the time, but really getting to know each other. And I tried to use that, and still do try to use that with staff today. Just um, and that professional development that you referred to, along with building the relationships with your team, combining those two, so you can get to a place where you're really talking about the things that matter. And that's where it's all about. So.
Yeah, I tell you, man, it's so important. I see those things. I talk about these in other episodes of our podcast, but that continuous education and personal development, it's such an important piece of being an effective leader. But I always noticed when you became a production manager, pulled you out of the lab like you're talking about, and it was you automatically, you hit the ground running. I didn't know if you had any leadership skills or not. I saw something in there, but I was hoping it was there, and you proved them right. And everyone was kind of just drawn to you. So I think there is somewhat of some traits there that, but mostly you're just really kind and respectful. I think that's a big piece of it as well. People respected you. So right now, how many people are you currently overseeing? Like, how big is your team? And maybe how many direct reports do you have there at Nemolife?
So right now I have 5 direct reports. The team in operations is somewhere around 25, between 20 and 25. Some of those are part-time. So we're still a pretty small company, as a startup, but I think there's advantages to that too, because people wear a lot of different hats, and you get to be exposed to things across the organization that maybe a larger organization can't do as much. So
right.
So anyway.
That's great. Yeah. So 4 or 5 direct reports?
5. Yeah.
5, yeah. So are those 5 people, or do they manage people or lead people in their areas?
3 of those 5 do, and then the other 2 are individual contributors. So
right.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I kind of talked about personal development a little bit. A big piece of my just coming from the military is this morning routine. I talk about morning routine probably more than I should. I talk about it with my people and my company, and then I talked about it when I was on osteogenics. I think this is a vital part of our leadership journey, because I remember before I had a morning routine, I would wake up the last second, throw clothes on, rush to work, and I started my day in this anxiety, stressful morning, and it's just kind of compounded, and people could feel that from me. Then I kind of changed that throughout my career, and I just noticed this huge improvement. Tell me a little bit about your morning routine, things you do to get in that right mindset before you come to work. What's your morning routine look like?
Well, when I'm in a good place, I've got 2 routines, and one is the one you just described, which is roll out of bed and get to work. But that's not always that's not my typical one. When I'm in a good place and when I'm doing the things I need to do, I usually wake up around 5:30, and then right now I've been going to Orange Theory Fitness 3 times a week. So the other 2 days of the week, I will either rest, or I'll go to there's a little gym in the town where I live. It's just a tiny little place that doesn't even have an air conditioner, so I have to go earlier. I'm gonna die in this heat.
I'm quick, huh?
Yeah. So I like to start out the day with exercise. I feel like that really helps me get into the right place, and it's funny because I have more energy throughout the day when I do that. And then on those days when I'm resting, or I'm not, going to that small gym, I have a shorter workout. I like to get home, shower off, of course, and then my wife and I will do time together where we'll just we'll either be in our Bibles together or we'll be talking about what's going on with our days, and we'll pray together, just talk about the things that are going on with the kids. So that really helps me just kind of get my thoughts organized. And it's easy for me to ignore I don't know, this is going to sound weird, but like my needs, I get into the work setting and it's easy for me to just kind of turn off the part of my brain that thinks about like, even like, am I thirsty or do I need to, take a break? And so that when I start my day off that way, I feel like I go into work with a more even keel, and I feel like the tone I set with employees is more relaxed, but at the same time more focused. So there's a productivity there that results that I can't force when it's, like, that bad routine where you just roll out of bed and come in and maybe the first thing you do is read your emails. Like
Right.
that's a recipe for disaster. So yeah, that's what I try to do with the morning. But like I gotta admit, it's not always what I land on, but it's what I aspire to.
Yeah, it's hard to do. And I found that when you lead people and like you have a family, see that great picture in your background there. But it's the only time really in the day that's about you. The rest of the day, it's about your company, the people who report to you, your family, your kids. And it's I get that 1-2 hours in the morning. It's my time. It's my time to reflect, meditate, pray, but also even education. When I'm working out, I'm always listening to some sort of books, and that uninterrupted time is always good. Get you in that right place.
Absolutely.
So you discussed fitness and exercise. That's another key piece that we talk about here on this podcast quite a bit. The other piece is education. Do you have any kind of educational practices from a leadership standpoint, from personal development?
Yeah, so I mean, I like to read when there's time, and for me, that happens often in the evenings after the kids are in bed. So I have three at home, and they're little, so a lot of my, when I get home, that's the rest of my time. But once they're down, usually around 8:30 or so, I'll get a chance to read some, or on my way to and from work, I like podcasts.
Yep.
So you actually put me on to Jocko, and I'm a big fan of Jocko now, and so I listen to his podcast, and he's a good mix of entertainment and education. And there's a guy named Peter Attia that's actually more health aligned, but I really like what he has to say, and I think he also has some things in his what he has to say that are leadership related. And Simon Sinek's a favorite. So yeah, listening to podcasts, I'm excited to listen to some of your guests, and just reading when I have the opportunity. I wish I was more of a reader. I've always looked up to you and some of our mutual friends that I feel like get through more books than I do. But yeah, I guess those are the main things that I can think of. And then just I love going to lunch with people who I really respect. We go to lunch occasionally, and several friends that I really look up to that have leadership responsibilities, and I'm always trying to learn from those conversations. So
Yeah, those lunches are powerful. Always kind of come away from those lunches with a new energy. That
yeah,
it's always great to be around people like yourself and those that just from your previous relation or careers, I guess. But here's one question. Wait, I'm gonna go back. Simon Sinek. You reminded me of for whatever reason, I was listening to some YouTube in my truck. You know how it just rotates to your whatever YouTube thinks you should listen to next. And Simon Sinek came on. I haven't listened to him in years, and I forgot how powerful his stuff is. He hits it right on the head. Every time he speaks, it's just wow. I mean, we're so in line in how he thinks, and I'm not nearly, to Simon Sinek level, but that guy is just incredible. How he puts it together, how he speaks, his TED Talks are incredible. I think he has a #1 listen to TED Talk.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I'm not surprised
TED
though.
Talks.
Yeah.
That guy is something else.
Yeah, he is. It's amazing. Like he's so people centric in the way that he thinks, and really, I think that that's a strength that you have, and that I try to have. It's like if you want to get the work done, you have to take it to that level where people buy in and they care, and they know that you care, and he's so good at that. That's like I feel like that's really his best strength. So
yeah, absolutely. So I'm dying to ask you the next question, just because when I think of this question, I think of you. But give me your best productivity hack. And I'm going to preface this question just because when we work together, you had the most organized notes, and whether it was on your notepad you kept with your multiple highlighters and everything, every color had a meaning or something, or your Evernote files where you had this crazy system in Evernote that, man, was just blew me away how you did that. But I think it really helped your organization. You're the most organized people I've ever met. And I definitely looked up to you in that regard, and many others. But right now, what are you doing that you would like to share with our listeners on productivity?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because I don't have that self-perception. Maybe it's because it's always an area where I'm trying to improve. I appreciate that. There are people I look up to that I think of being more organized than me. But it's funny right now on our team, the thing that I'm really into is a system used in Monday.com. It's a project management tool. Really what I like about it, and you mentioned Evernote. There was some things about Evernote that have overlap here. Anything that helps me stay organized with my priorities, and it's not just about what you got to do today. It's about what's most important to tackle today. And I think the discernment of how I'm going to organize my time most effectively, and that's always appealed to me. So tools that will push alerts to me or help me go to a list that is already pre-populated with the things I got to get done today. For example, in Monday.com, we can build out these what they're called boards, where it's basically you put out your tasks, and you can assign who's going to do what, and you can assign timelines and deadlines that will also push alerts to you. And it's a really neat tool. I know there's a lot of different tools out there that are similar, but that's one that I'm using right now. But yeah, I think just time management is really important to me. And so any tools that'll help me with that. I don't know if I'm coming through on any hacks, right? But I think those systems only work if you use them regularly. I think one of the biggest reasons why people try to use something like Evernote or I can't remember the Outlook version of Evernote that's also common, or it's OneNote, I believe is what it's called. OneNote, Monday.com. These sorts of tools only work if you really go all in. Because if you only put a few notes in Evernote and then you want to use it as your like personal Google, it's not going to work, because you try to search something that you may or may not have saved. And if you don't save everything there, then it becomes a useless thing that you toyed with one time. So maybe my wife teases me about my tendency to either be like not buy in or go all in head first completely. And I think maybe that's why those tools work for me. But yeah, I don't know if I have any real hacks, but those are the things that I try to do to keep myself organized.
Well,
And,
you just gave us a lot of gold there. I don't know if there's a hack in there, but the all-in piece is, as you're saying that, I've tried so many different programs that, I realized I've never gone all in. That's why I'm still looking for that that productivity program. I'm always using something different. So that's absolutely true. I like that.
Well, you have to be careful who it's like getting married. You don't want to go all in until you're sure it's the right one. So that's the other challenge there is I've gone on all in sometimes when I probably shouldn't have. So I don't know. Yeah, you got to be careful about it too. But yeah.
What was that system in Evernote you used, or maybe still use?
Yeah, oh, you put me on the spot.
Something that you use in Silicon Valley that you got.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank right now on the name of the system, but it's basically using the tag feature that they have to call up anything that you have in and then prioritize, like I was saying, based on like what needs to be done now, what can wait till later, or something that you just hope to do in the future, putting those tags so you can sort by those different categories and then work through your list systematically based on that priority. That's really what that system was all about. So I need to look it up so I can tell you. See, this is another reason why I use Evernote. So I have my memory is stored outside of my body because I tend to have a pretty bad memory.
Yeah, you got me on that. I used it for a couple of years and I lost my Evernote license and got away from it. But I know my performance at work, I mean, it changed. It was a lot better once I started getting my stuff organized in Evernote. It was pretty good. I liked it. We ended up buying a subscription to Evernote because of you.
Yeah, we did. Again, it was like it was as useful as people were bought into it, So in some cases that it wasn't very useful, but I think for others in the company, it was a really valuable tool. So yeah.
So moving on, most of these listeners are going to be either newly promoted. Really, my passion when it comes to leadership is frontline leadership. I've noticed in my career, that's kind of where myself and companies are kind of falling short is, you have this really good operator or technician or nurse or teacher, whatever profession they're in. And the hardest working, best person in that group gets promoted as the leader of that group eventually when that leader, transfers out or leaves or whatever.
Yeah.
And we put them in charge of people from day one. And sometimes I think we maybe forget about that piece of it. We think more about the administrative type of work that you have to do, talking about Evernote and all those other things, answering emails,
right.
Production schedules, and we can go down the list of a million things that they got to do depending on what their job is. And we train them on that, and we don't train them on how to be the leader.
Right.
So that's where I'm kind of focusing my podcast and my business is helping those people at that point in their careers. But if you have to give any advice to someone who has just stepped into a leadership role for the first time, perhaps they're now managing their peers at one point. They went from being a peer to a leader overnight. What advice would you give them?
Yeah. Wow. Great question. I think that being in that entry level or that first level of management is often one of the hardest places to be because oftentimes you've got the top level leadership that want to see certain things done. And oftentimes you're having to be the bridge between what is coming from up above and then the people on the ground who are doing the actual work. And sometimes there's disconnect between those two groups. And so for those like entry level or first level of managers, you can end up in a place where you feel like you're supposed to take a side. Are you going to side with top level leadership and be that at times a bad guy with the people on the ground, or are you going to side with the employees that work under you and then gripe about what's up above? And I don't think either is the answer. But I think that really, if I was to give advice to somebody who's first stepping into a role like that or kind of a middle manager role, it's about connecting people and connecting not just And what I mean by connecting people is the idea that you understand, you're trying to help the people who are under you know why the people who are above you are wanting certain things. And this is nothing new, the idea of understanding why, or knowing the why behind something. But it's so fundamental, because if you want buy-in across all domains, you've really got to connect that reason that is a motivator for your people. So here at Nemolife, one of the things that we try to emphasize is, you who are working in the lab and you're doing these tasks that are repetitive often and can be mundane sometimes. Why do we do that? What's the importance of, if you weren't doing that the right way, how might it ruin an experiment that might lead to us not discovering a really great drug treatment for Alzheimer's disease? And like, it almost sounds overblown, but it's not. That little act that seems meaningless or repetitive to somebody on the ground floor might really lead to a discovery that could make a difference in thousands of lives later.
Yeah.
And I know that's different depending on what industry you're in, but the concept is still there of communicating that meaning to every level, and making sure that everybody is bought in. Sometimes I think organizations make up a why that sounds nice, but you can't fake it. If it's not the real reason that's motivating the leadership, people are smart, and I think people at the ground floor, they know more than a lot of times we leaders realize, and so it has to be genuine, it has to be real, and so yeah, getting to know your people so that you can have those conversations and communicate the why. That's all. I don't know if I answered the question, but I think that's
I love that. I love that answer, just because there's so many times we forget this, as leaders and managers and directors. We get all this information from customers or the president or the CEO, constantly getting fed stuff. The vision, the purpose, why we're doing this, and the people on the floor don't get that information. We just assume they know sometimes.
Yeah.
Like, okay, so I think that's a great point you make, is we have to break this stuff down to them at that level. Those frontline leaders, it's so important that they understand, for one. So the senior management and middle management has to break it down into that frontline leader role, whether it's a foreman or supervisor or whatever they are, and they need to break it down to their people. So all this stuff gets broken down in bits and chunks that make sense to them. And I talk to customers almost every day in my current role, and I feel their pain. Like, they stress it to me every day, but the people on the floor don't know that. They're working like everything's great. So, it's not that it's bad. It's just need to know the urgency behind what we're doing, and it's a great point.
Well, once people know why we do things, then I think the next thing for me is helping them, or once people start acting on that why and you start seeing that buy-in, to spotlight and really give credit to people who work under you, so that it's not about you anymore, it's about them. When I talk to the people who are above me, bragging on my best people, which I know you did this for me, and you do that with an employee and they'll run through a wall for you. You make somebody see the why behind what we do, and then they buy in and they start acting that way, and you appreciate that in a real way, then that becomes contagious. And then you get a group of people who are excited to come to work every day because it's meaningful, and
Right.
they know when they do a good job, you're going to recognize that, and you get a whole culture like that, and it's powerful.
Yeah, you hit it right on the head. That recognition goes so far with people.
Yeah.
They're working every day doing the same repetitive task, and sometimes they forget while they're doing it. And just recognizing those things. I know a lot of people say that the only recognition is money, but I disagree. I think, this, pat on the back, kudos, those things are equally as powerful. It makes them feel great. And, they need it and they deserve it. They're the ones that are earning the money for us.
Yeah, absolutely. Making it fun too. Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there. But yeah, making it fun, like you said, it doesn't have to always come in the form of a raise. I mean, one of my favorite books is The Great Game of what is it? The Great Game of Business by Jack Stack. And that's one of the things he talks about is, seeing what motivation you want from employees and making it a game, making it not just a KPI, but something that kind of adds some fun to the day-to-day. And
yeah, absolutely, make it fun. You ever put that foosball table in the break room? I thought that was the silliest thing. Like, no one's going to use this foosball table. And every day people were out there. And we had foosball tournaments. I mean, it was a huge hit. And it's something I never even thought of. Yeah, having fun at work is really important.
Yeah, it's underestimated. And, I think some people might think that would drain your productivity, but I disagree. I think you get more out of people when they have those moments to connect and enjoy that kind of fun together. And then they go back to the work floor and you get more out of a team that enjoys working together and has those moments where they can pause and have fun. So
right. All right. So we talked a little bit about leadership books, education. I kind of think there's, for me anyway, it may not be for everyone else, but you read these books where you say you go to a conference, you get all excited and can't wait to get back to your company and implement these new things you learned, and it kind of goes away. It's kind of like light says fire and the fire burns out pretty quick. Yeah. Continuous education, personal development thing is constant. So I think that's why it's so important. But while I'm reading books, I often think, like attitude was a big thing for me. I didn't always have the best attitude, and I was, emotional intelligence was always one of my weaknesses in the beginning of my career. And I would read about it, and almost every book talks about, or leadership book talks about attitude or emotional intelligence, and I would pull stuff out of it and I'll try to implement it, but next thing I know, my attitude's bad and I have a low, EQ again. So it wasn't really until I started reading, expanding my horizon, I guess, and I started reading more about, gratitude, law of attraction, or that I talk about episode 2, which I'll put in the show notes of this episode, an attitude of gratitude.
Yeah.
When I started implementing that, it's more of a practice than it was so much of, reading and learning and educating yourself on it. Is more something you would have to do every day. And, you talk about prayer in your opening introduction. I think that's such an important part, whether it's prayer or meditation, and kind of that, that emotional upheaval you need to do to empty your mind, empty the stress, and get yourself in the right state of mind. Is there something in leadership books, or maybe even a leadership course or conference, that you think is kind of missing? What, you have an example of something like that where you feel like there's a gap between what's out there right now in the books and education that you're seeing, day to day, that works for you?
Well, I think there's a lot of different philosophies on leadership, and I'm definitely not well versed in all of them, so it's hard for me to say what's not out there. But something I wish I read more is probably just this concept of getting to the truth. I think that's something that holds true not just in business, but across the board, even in personal life. You can't really make something work until you know the ugly truth. And I have a memory of our interaction one time where something went wrong in the clean room, and I think I had some employees that were sweeping some problems under the rug when I had first started managing that work area. And there was a day where I found out the truth, like it wasn't good. It was like, oh man, I'm gonna be in trouble now, And I remember going to your office and sitting down with you and expecting to get the hammer, to come down on me. And you surprised me so much because you seemed excited. And it was like, I realized after the conversation, I think I was just in shell shock at the time, but later I reflected on it and I realized that you liked hearing it, not because it was good news, but because we were finally getting to the bottom of things. And you can't solve a problem until you know what's really happening. And so that was a really important lesson for me, being truth tellers and truth seekers and being the kind of people who, whether it's good news or bad news, we want to get the real facts. And I think that that's really core for me now in my role here at Nemolife. It's not always good news, but what you do with that news and how you respond. I think some leaders want to avoid knowing what's really going on sometimes. And that's not real leadership. I think real leadership is not just being willing to hear the truth every once in a while, but actually seeking it out and trying to build your business around, data and facts that give you that ground truth, so you can make the right decision from it. So,
yeah, I think that's a great answer. I haven't really thought about that, but it's so true. Once you know the information, then you can put a plan together to go fix it. And those moments are great. But, as leaders, we have to be approachable.
Yeah.
If someone comes to you and tells you the truth about something and you do drop the hammer on them, then that employee's not going to ever come back to you with the truth.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Yeah, it made me think of I'm going to botch this quote, but it's basically something to the effect of like the fastest way to make somebody never do the right thing again is to punish them for it. Like it's like or make somebody feel silly for finally opening up in a way that maybe they'll get in trouble, or being vulnerable about something. As a leader, those are some of the most important moments you have, how you respond. Right. And do you punish somebody for bringing you bad news and kill the messenger, or do you teach this principle of we're not gonna look for blame here, we're gonna look for a solution?
Yeah, right. I mean, we're all the same team.
Yeah.
We break up in these silos and we work in different departments, different areas, and I mean it's all one team. We're all there for the same goal. We're all trying to make the company money so we can grow and progress our careers. So if you think about it like that's their problem or this is our problem, and that's where we kind of get crossways sometimes. It's all of our problems. It's come together as a team and fix it. And
right.
That's it. Do you have a book or maybe something our listeners can take away from getting down to the truth? Anything you've read or studied that's helpful?
Yeah, I mean, I think I already mentioned it, but that Great Game of Business by Jack Stack, I think that came out a long time ago, but they did a new release of it probably 5 years ago, something like that, an updated version. I think that's one that hits on this concept, and I think in that book he talks about it from a standpoint of knowing the truth of your financial statement and your balance sheet and your bottom line, and not making those things hidden from employees, but really, transmitting the parts of that balance sheet that are affected to the relevant departments and saying, here's the real truth of our business, and what you do affects the business in this way. Mm-hmm. And so instead of it being, it's sort of explains itself when your employees understand those numbers and what they do, why it matters on that business level. That's inherently motivating. So I thought that was a cool way of looking at it from a business standpoint. But I think just being a truth seeker and truth teller at all levels is it's really the way to success across not just business, but I think in personal life too. But that's we could get into even more if you wanted.
Oh, that's great. It's a book I haven't read, so I need to pick that one up. Which brings us to our next topic or next question. There's so many times in my career I've wished I could hand either my boss or an employee a leadership book. Like, you really need to read this. And not that I'm an expert in any way possible or any means, but I just think all leaders should be reading something. And to me, if every leader could read, my big book is the book It's Your Ship, with that Navy captain. Can't remember even the name of the captain, the author of that book. But to me, that breaks down leadership in the perfect way. And maybe I'm biased because I'm prior Navy, but if everyone could just read that book, I think we'd have a lot more leaders out there, a lot better run companies. Do you have a book? You mentioned the Great Game of Business. Do you have any other books that you would recommend everyone should read?
Yeah, I mean, some of mine are cliche or, have been around a long time. 7 Habits is always one that's a good one. You introduced me to lean concepts, and Machine That Changed the World was a really, it had a big impact on me when I was starting out and working in an area that did, manufacturing in a sense. And so that was one that it really influenced me. Yeah, I mean, like I said earlier, a lot of my leadership learning comes through the form of podcasts. So even something like this is, when you're working father of 3, sometimes a podcast is just an easier way to get information than sitting down and reading. Although I do like when I can have a chance to do that. Yeah.
So you mentioned Jocko podcasts. Are there any other podcasts that we should be putting on in our library to listen to?
In terms of leadership, well, I think I said Simon Sinek. He's got a good one. And then there's a podcast called Second in Command that I've been listening to here and there, and it's really geared towards COOs.
Okay.
And so I'm not a COO, but it's basically the idea of, when you're serving under a CEO, and it's about aligning the organization to that vision. And so I think it's a good podcast for a lot of leaders who are not at the very top, the CEO. And so that applies to a lot of people. And how do you work with the CEO, that top level of leadership, in a way that, gives them credibility with the employees, but also makes what their vision for the company is work at the ground level and across domains. So
that's fascinating. I haven't heard of that podcast. I need to listen to that one. Appreciate you mentioning that. That's really interesting concept for a podcast. That's great. And speaking of podcasts, Leadership Secrets is our podcast, and the biggest thing behind this podcast is we're trying to get out those leadership secrets. We both work for the same company, and within that company we had an owner, and I've written about him in a couple different posts on LinkedIn. But Dr. Barty is his name. He wasn't didn't cut his teeth in leadership. He was a dentist and oral surgeon, and then he started his company. And I wouldn't say he was far removed from leadership as anyone I know, but he wasn't in the leadership spectrum. He was just a really good guy.
Yeah.
And to me, that was so powerful, because I'll be trying to implement all these different tactics, techniques into my leadership journey, and I was constantly reading about emotional intelligence or whatever it might have been at the time. And then I saw Dr. Barty, and we would all run through a brick wall for that guy. It was just because he was a super nice guy. Yeah. He made you feel important when he talked to you. Yeah. He had that energy about him, and it was just, I thought he was a great leader, and I don't know if he's even read a leadership book. But so with that in mind, do you have a secret in your leadership journey that's worked for you that more people should be doing out there in the world of leadership?
I mean, I think I talked about this a little bit. I think a lot of leaders secretly have a lot of insecurities and fears about how they're seen. And, you know, as a leader, I think sometimes there's a temptation to take credit for things that are accomplished by the people who work for you, especially when the people above you don't know that who accomplished this. So having the courage to, instead of stealing credit, give it to the people who on the ground did it, and really, even to a fault, when you could, you played a big role in what they accomplished, or maybe a bigger role than they did, being big enough to still point at others and spotlight them. I think it builds trust, and it also it makes it more about our success than my success.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I think that's hard because sometimes we want credit, and we're hoping that people are seeing what we're doing, and we're working our tail off. I think having the confidence to know that will be seen without you having to work extra, like to take credit. I think having the confidence to know that people will see it, and you just pass that good glory or whatever on to the people who also deserve it. And yeah, that's something Barry did. I think he was good at that. Whether or not he'd read any leadership books, he certainly got it. He certainly got the idea of making you feel like what you did mattered. And I think that's what it accomplishes when you're big enough to make it about others and not taking that credit on for yourself.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. And that's so powerful. I mean, a lot of times we climb the ranks into that management position because, we're highly competitive people. We develop this ego over a course of time. Like, I do this job better than anyone else. That's why I got promoted. I'm going to keep doing it, and I want the credit. Oh, that's a great one. Actually, I have a free document for our listeners if you want to download it on our website. The first 30 days of leadership. I talk about this in this document. I always think those first 30 days of leadership are so important and powerful. So I put together about a 14-page document you can download, give it to your employees. And it's a pretty quick read, but this ego piece is definitely in there. I think you got to check that ego at the door, because as soon as you become a leader, it's no longer about you.
Yeah.
It's about the team. It's just like when you become a parent. And that's the closest thing I can relate it to. It's about you until you have a kid. Then it all of a sudden it's about us. It changes overnight. And a lot of times people have problems with that. You're right, because they still want that credit. They don't want to give their team the credit. But man, that's a great one. I like that one.
Well, it's not something that I've been perfect in, but it's something I aspire to. And I think we all need to try to work hard on ourselves in that area. So
yeah, it's hard, man. I'm the same way. It's not always perfect, but just keep trying, keep studying, and keep learning, keep growing.
Yeah.
All right, Kellen, that's kind of the end of our podcast. Can you tell listeners where you can be found? You got a brand, social, maybe your company's brand, or where you are located at? Where can they follow you?
Yeah. So I'm not the most personally branded guy. You can find me on LinkedIn. As far as our company, we have a website, nemolifeinc.com. So you can find us there. Our company is also on Facebook and LinkedIn. So I think we're doing some exciting things. So I hope your listeners will check us out and see what's there. And then if anybody would want to connect with me on LinkedIn, I'd be happy to connect and chat with anybody who's interested. But yeah, that's about all I got.
That's all you got. All right. Well, you had some excellent answers to these questions. I think the listeners are going to get a lot of benefit out of it. I really appreciate you being on the podcast. We got to meet up sometime quick. Good seeing you. Good talking to you. Appreciate you being on the podcast.
Thanks, Lee. Yeah, let's get lunch soon.
All right.
Thank you for tuning in to the Leadership Secrets Podcast. Please join us next time as we bring you more leadership secrets from the people who are actually doing it. See you soon.